Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my power ranking series for my number three team. We're looking at the Green Bay Packers. All right, so before we kind of get into the more rough side of things, let's go through what I think they did actually fairly well. We're going to quickly note that Jordan Love is still here, but he's really not threatening Rodgers' job anymore. He's a more likely trade candidate, but I don't know if it'll be this season. That kind of time's passed for an asset being traded like that, so I'd more watch for it come the offseason. Speaking of Rodgers, still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Back-to-back MVP. Uh, there's definitely some issues in play, right? No quarterback I've really talked about is flawless. But I mean, he's still far away one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Still got the arm strength. Still has the processor, especially within that short to intermediate area. He's still very much elite there. The deep ball was definitely struggling a little bit last year, but I don't know if that'll be a problem going forward. Still has some mobility as well, so he's definitely not a statue in the pocket on top of that. And the arm strength is definitely not teetered off yet. Left tackle, David Bakhtiari, one of the best, if not the best, pass protecting offensive tackle in the league. He just went down with injury again, or put back on the pup list. I, I don't I don't really know what's happening there. That knee injury continues to annoy him and continues to be an issue. I worry that his career might be coming to an end just because that injury just does not seem to leave him, which would be a huge blow to the Packers not to have Bakhtiari, especially if they just extended him right before this injury happened, and it's not looking good. It's worrisome to be honest in its entirety, but you really hope that a player like him can find a way back on the field. Him and Rodgers are super close. One of the things this line struggled with in the past is the edge players. So we're gonna all hope for Bakhtiari to come back. We do have Yosh behind him here. Yosh has had some pretty good success actually. Very good athlete at tackle on top of that. I think them getting him back here was definitely not a bad idea whatsoever. So Yosh has played really good fill-in play. I wouldn't expect anything higher than that here, but just do note he's here. He'll probably fill in at some point during the season. It's just likely. I like him a lot. John Runyon, just fairly good starter. He's kind of played that starter capable level guard. I can't say he's excelled over that, but I really can't knock him for playing under that either. He's played right at starter level quality. He plays well in this heavy motion, at the O line type offense, and he does his job. I do like Sean Ryan, who they picked up here, though. Man, that guy, his burst into people coming off snap is very unique and very special. Some coach talking it sounds like shotguns when he actually hits someone coming off first, and I completely agree. I love the Sean Ryan pick here. I was all for it. I think Packers fans should be super excited to have him here. I would have been totally fine trying him at tackle and letting him, fail there and then kick him inside. But this is a situation with how this O line is starting to be constructed. I'm actually more than okay with him playing guard here. I'd be actually looking to get him starting sooner rather than later. I like him that much. Josh Myers is the center. He's played, I can't say perfectly average level center play yet. It's slightly below, but even then, he's a young guy. He's still developing. The chances that he goes over that, especially with Green Bay's history of developing centers, I think it's likely he'll get to at the very minimum average center to maybe above average center middle play. And I think I was not a fan of the pick. I mean, definitely you could have picked any of the other centers there that are way better, but even so, he's played okay, even if it was a bit of an overdraft. The one issue I do have on this line is Royce Newman. I do not like that he's starting, especially over Runyon or even Zach Tom behind him. And I'll get to Tom in a moment. I think that is a underrated weakness of the O line. Uh, he's done fill in roles before, and even when he's filled in, I do not think he's played anywhere near caliber of play. I've seen him lean. Guys have caught him a lot. A lot of the interiors that they've faced, especially come playoff time, really attack that interior. Like they of course attack the edge. I mentioned the tackle spot was a weak spot for the Packers the last couple years. and that's really where they're getting a lot of their pressure. But I mean, it doesn't mean they weren't throwing stuff up the middle, and they definitely were. That Bucks game a couple years back in the playoffs definitely showed the complete dismantling of that O line. They could not protect Rodgers uh, nearly as long as he needed. So I do not like Royce Newman starting there. I'd rather move Sean Ryan to right guard and let him start. Now, Zach Tom is actually another very underrated player in this draft. He's very light. And when I mean that, I mean I think I weighed him in somewhere at like 285, which is super. Like most guards sit at a minimum of like 305 to 315, so he's under. Uh, but I'd actually try that tackle here. Do not be surprised if they give him a shot. He is super clean and quick feet. And in a system that's as zone heavy dependent as this, that basically relies more on your athletics than actually just the power behind your arms and the weight of your body, Zach Tom could be a very excellent tackle here. I had a very high grade. I had a day two grade on him. There's a couple analysts I know that also were super excited about Zach Tom. He kind of got in late in the draft where we finally got Wake Forest testing numbers, combine numbers, and like, wow, I mean, with those numbers, with what we see on tape, it's very special. It's just that weight is really just the issue. People are, I think, in the league afraid of him being that light, and the things that make him special might be gone if you have him add weight. I think the chance the Packers have taken here by drafting him, though, was absolutely worth it. I think you could get a starting level tackle or starting level guard. You can even play him at center. He has experience at all positions, which for how this line has had to try to fill in injuries with Elton Jenkins in the past, having a guy like that in Zach Tom is super valuable. So keep an eye on him. They did also pick up Rasheed Walker at tackle. He's more of just a younger tackle piece. He can maybe fill in, give you some depth level talent for a little while. I don't expect he'll ever skyrocket very highly. He has an attitude problem from what I've talked to people about, and it's been evident on the field. There is a play of him uh, winning a rep and then humping a guy afterwards mid play. So not what you want to see your tackle focusing on. Humping a defensive player instead of protecting the quarterback. But regardless, you do have to keep note of it. Maybe he cleans up here with Green Bay. There's some really good veteran people here to maybe help correct that mentality. So maybe it gets fixed here. But he's here, and I think I do want to note him. I think he's talented enough that I want to note that he's here. Especially since I haven't seen him play in the NFL yet to figure out whether he should be listed or not. Elton Jenkins is a very fun player. We talked about him filling in at all spots. Basically, was a center coming out. They had him play at guard. They had him play at tackle, center. Like basically, whatever you need, he'll fill in. He is absolutely deserving of the biggest bag possible from Green Bay. Super versatile player in that essence. And I imagine they are probably working on it. I'd be surprised if they let him go. But he'll be starting at right tackle this year instead of at guard. I think that's totally fine. I said tackles were their biggest issues the last couple seasons, where basically the good teams they faced against really just bodied them on the edge, or they'd send pressure up the middle and basically would just collapse Rodgers within the pocket. So definitely getting better tackle play here is key. And if you can get Bach and Jenkins on the field at the same time, that's a hell of a tackle duo to be walking in. Definitely one that's above most other teams. Okay, so the wide receiver core is realistically what's holding this team back from being the number one spot. Uh, I I could, in theory, get by Newman if he shows something good early in preseason, right? I can get by Royce Newman starting over some of the other guys, especially since the other guys are rookies. I could get over that. But man, do you need this receiver core to step up this year? They're going to be tested, and they're going to be tested early. You got two rookies as well that I fully expect will be getting time and time early. So you need them to get ready fast. Obviously, Christian Watson has the most pressure on him to perform. Uh, I mean, he really needs to become that diamond in the rough because of that. They're expecting him to eventually become that number one receiver here. He's got the height, the length, the speed as well. I mean, he tested fairly well for that size. And I talked about him early in my sleepers video about his route running. I said his route running is super underrated for a guy that lengthy. Usually they don't run routes that crisp or sink that well, and he does have it coming out of North Dakota State. So there's a lot of things to like there. But I need to see him catch up to NFL caliber level play. He was able to show me that he could handle some of the better college level players at the Senior Bowl, which was a very big boost to him. But I need to see it versus NFL caliber players. So this preseason is going to be huge for what he can do. They also have Romeo. I think it's pronounced Dubs. I was pronouncing it Dobbs for a while, but I think it's pronounced Dubs. Coming from Nevada, he is a interesting player. He struggled heavily a lot at the Senior Bowl for whatever reason. Just was not really expecting him to struggle that much. Not with how well he played with Strong. But he did, so it definitely dropped his draft stock a fair bit. Went from potentially being a third round pick down to I think it's like a fifth is where they took him, somewhere in day three. But he's got a super interesting build. It's a very stocky frame at receiver, especially in his lower half. Very strong lower half, almost running back like. So they might try to get some things designed for him to just get the ball in hand and just see what he can do on the field after. That might be the best way for Dubs to get ready for the NFL level and get confidence in him again coming off that draft season. You might be able to get something special in there. I was very excited at that pick for the Packers as well. I think that was a underrated selection late on. I think it's a potentially high reward for a very low risk. Now Al Lazard is starting here. He doesn't really do much here. He's more the possession catch or run blocker. They mostly use him for run blocking actually. I haven't talked about Cooper Kupp yet, but Cooper Kupp does a lot of this almost lead blocking for the Rams when they do these outside runs. Al Lazard is used almost in a similar way here, except he's not nearly as agile or as fluid in his hips. So they line him up often more closer to the line, but he's often used as a seal blocker on the edge for these outside looks or for these inside zones that are designed to potentially kick outside if they crash inside. So his run blocking is definitely valued here. The Green Bay Packers clearly value it. They made sure they got him back for the year. So I wouldn't expect a big year, but I think you can expect him to be on the field for certain looks. Sammy Watkins, what's the meme? Expected to go off week one, essentially, and then not really do much after. Get like a third of his yards week one. He's an okay player. You'd like to see the Packers try to talk to Odell instead. I think that's what you'd rather see. They try to move some money around and get a push with Odell. But they want to go with Sammy Watkins instead, and we're going to have to just kind of see how that works. Sammy's been on a lot of teams since then. He's had varying success depending on different teams and what he's been with. I won't expect him to be the wide receiver one for. Do I expect it? It's really tough to see if I can expect him to be the wide receiver one all year long, or if I think Christian Watson's going to take over. It's very possible that Watson eventually actually catches up to speed early and kicks Watson to the number two spot, in which that if that does happen and Watson starts playing closer to his potential, then this receiver core gets a lot better. Slot wide receivers: Amari, Rogers, Randall, Cobb. Cobb's still here because he's just got a lot of chemistry with Rogers. He still has some idea of spacing coming from the slot, but he can't turn up field. He can't do anything overly athletic. I don't expect him to block well. His hands are just okay for at this point of his career. He's mostly here as a base level of play type player, and Rogers here is more for the explosiveness out of the slot, right? Rogers can turn up field and give a little more oomph to the athletic department when coming out of the slot. So they have some versatility at slot, and that's totally fine by me. I don't think that's going to hurt or overly help them, but I think it at least gives them some answers for some different looks, which is valuable. At tight end, Robert Tunian. Mercedes Lewis is still here to block, but Tunyan's really the more important tight end as he's the tight end out here to be up for pass catching. He's had some moments of good play. He definitely had a Pro Bowl caliber level of season when Evan Ingram won it. I think he should have won it instead of Evan Ingram. But ever since then, it's been a little lower. Hasn't quite filled that same level of play since then. But getting him back on a 1 year for another just 1 year push for the Packers, I think that's a totally fine thing. They're kind of just getting what they're familiar with or what they know is a decent level of talent, while they're still going to make this heavy push. Running backs, some good ones here. Aaron Jones definitely deserves a star. He's a fun runner. Um, you could question whether keeping him or Corey Linsley was the better idea. I would have kept Corey Linsley, especially after drafting Dillon, but that's, I value the O line a lot more. And Jones has definitely won them some games. He's definitely underrated in the receiving game. His his ability to separate isn't overly great, but his run after the catch, like his rack ability as a running back, is actually more valuable. And he also does really well in these outside zones. But your inside guy is A.J. Dillon. Obviously, he's just your absolute pounder of a running back in the backfield. Lots of, pushing forward, break tackles, really wear down defense, bring them in closer so Rodgers can then, bomb them on the outside or spread them out. There's tons of stuff you can do with Dillon and Jones and Rodgers kind of all working in tandem here. I did want to mention Kylan Hill, though, as Kylan Hill is kind of you didn't really get to see him much last year, but I think he was a very underrated player. I have him as a fourth round pick on my board. I think he went seventh, which I thought was great value for the Packers. He does a lot of what Jones does fairly well. He emulates that a lot. So if you need Jones to take a break or Jones isn't available for you to play, I think Kylan Hill can do a lot of that stuff, and I'd be looking for Hill to be getting some play time coming up here in this season. Okay, this is where this gets insanely good. Quick note, Campbell is close to start. I want to see a little more at the beginning of the season before I give it to him. But he's, exceptionally great tackler. Was not missing tackles. Was Bobby Wagner-esque to watch him. His coverage has been okay, but not to the high end level. But that's what you're hoping out of drafting Quay Walker here. Is the higher athlete, possibly higher coverage. Played for Georgia, very similar style of defense, right? So you're hoping that this can be your tandem in the middle for a 3-4 defense, and I think that's not out of the question. Also, just start Wyatt, Green Bay. I know you signed Reed before drafting Wyatt, but just start Devonte Wyatt. He's just a so much better player. Athletically gifted. Some of the actual moves he has, like Wyatt actually can do the cross chop version that Aaron Donald does, which is super hard to do even for edge players. And for Wyatt to be able to do it from the interior like Donald does, it makes him harder to block. So I would honestly just start Wyatt, and then I'd let Reed rotate off the bench maybe for certain, for certain looks or for some rest looks. I'd let Wyatt eat early. You could get a potential defensive player of the year, rookie defensive player of the year type season out of Wyatt if things all click. But I think that only happens if you start him early. So definitely get Wyatt starting early if they haven't already switched that decision since time of filming. Dean Lowry is still here for that D end role. He doesn't do overly much. He's more of a plug and play type player, and I'm glad that Wyatt will at least be taking more pressure off the interior with him getting more snaps, and maybe they get Reed and Wyatt out in the field at the same time in some overload looks or some 3-4 looks. Kenny Clark, super great nose tackle, high end run defender, coming from the 0 or 1 tech with some actual ability to rush the passer from that spot too, which not too many people can do that, right? Got like Vita Vea, and maybe DeForest Buckner are those kind of interior guys that are high end run defenders that can actually rush the passer really well coming off as well. Buckner's kind of the peak of those like bigger D tackles, but Kenny Clark is super valuable to this defense, and getting him some help finally on the interior, I think was definitely a great move. Preston Smith is still here. He's had some good seasons. The extension being that long is not my favorite. I don't know if you'll get the same level of play as you would from Zadarius Smith, but he has good seasons under his belt every now and then. So you just have to hope that this is the season he's another good player. Kingsley Enagbare was a later round selection who does play with a bit of power, who could become something here of a rotational player if it really starts to click for him. So I'm more interested to see how he adjusts to the Green Bay defense. He played a bit of a unique position on the Carolina Gamecocks. So I'm curious to see how Enagbare does here. But the big man on the edge is Rashawn Gary, high-end pressure machine, kicks inside with serious force, very underrated player coming off the edge. You really like a lot what you see of Gary. Gary actually was more suited for a 4-3 style look when the Packers took him. He basically spent that first season rotating off and getting his body more fit for a 3-4. And man, ever since then he's been tough. He's been really tough to stop. Uh, I mean, a lot of these teams that like to go in motion. If you motion to Gary's side, he's got an honestly good 50% chance if you motion any sort of play to his side that he's just going to come in and wreck it, which is super awesome to have for this defense. This defense is going to be flying high this year. Gary's got a lot of these ripper or power or even club moves. He's got a serious club move with that left arm, hitting some of these inner guys or getting underneath their shoulder and just propping them and forklifting them. There's a lot of awesome stuff you can do with Gary and pairing him with this front seven. I love every bit of it. Defensive backs here also very good. The depth is not my favorite, but there's some decent level depth players here. Eric Stokes played a little higher than I initially thought last season. The athletics were definitely there, and that's mostly what he's relying on early. A lot of the technique is still sloppy, but his play game sense is definitely getting better, and those athletics is definitely helping him early. And it's fun to pair him up on a lot of guys if they end up facing teams with some extreme burners. I mean, having Stokes be able to take away that burner and still have Jair to do anything else is excellent. Razul Douglas is here as well. Another very solid player. The deal they actually were able to retain him on, I'm a fan of. I thought there was a solid chance that the team was going to throw 12 mil a year at Razul Douglas, and the fact they got him for I think it was 7. It was like 7 to 8. It's definitely under 10 a year. Was a very very team friendly deal, and it was a good deal for Douglas as well. I'm all for the team, the player finding a good middle ground, and I think they found it here. He had a good stretch last year, but there's still some plays with stiffness with Douglas. He's not the most overly fluid corner. He can be grabby at times as well. But even with that being said, he's played really well in this defense, and these are the exact guys he played with last year. I expect fairly similar play. Keyshawn Dixon is here too, another very kind of quick, speedy little slot corner. Do keep an eye on him. They might deploy him a little more often than they've talked about. They've seemed fairly high on him from what I've prodded around on. Jair Alexander, obviously one of the best corners in the league. Super fluid corner, especially in man coverage. He's given even some taller corners, some of these big guys like Mike Evans, a run for their money. Really just kind of getting in their grill and punching the ball out. So you're super happy to have him. I can't really speak any more highly of him. He's pretty flawless for the build that he's at. Adrian Amos, really good season last year. PFF spoke very highly of him as well. Uh, I don't know if they'll be able to retain Amos for the long haul. Looks like the money issue is going to catch up with them eventually if they can't figure it out, and they still have to figure out what they're doing at receiver and tight end long term. So I do worry Amos might be a casualty of that, but he's been a super solid player. I don't think I think there's a couple times I've lowered him below star, but even then he's not been that far below star. He's been super great at what he's done. And Savage is also a fun player. They bring him up and down. They let both these guys go hybrid. Sometimes they get single high, sometimes they get double, sometimes one of them gets come down in man. They move them all over the place, and both know how to lay a hit. I'll give them that too. Both Savage and Amos can lay a hit. So I love this safety duo. I think the secondary is extremely hard to play against. Special teams and coaching. Quick note, getting Rich Bisaccia here is huge. This is the absolute worst special teams in the league last year. It was almost comically bad. And getting one of the more upper end special team coordinators who showed that he could keep a team together despite a lot of adversity is, I think, a huge thing for the Packers. It's also a huge vote of confidence that Bisaccia had to come here to think that maybe they can make a push for it. If he can't fix the special teams here, then I don't know if anyone can. You might have to just cut the special teams. The teamers themselves are currently Pat O'Donnell and Mason Crosby. Crosby's been up and down play-wise. I think age is starting to get to him. He'll have streaks of being fine, but then he'll have streaks of where he just can't hit the broadside of a barn. So I think the age is starting to come up to him. We saw it with Vinatieri. which sucks because Rosy's been around so long, especially with the Packers, but it just might be time. The other coordinators are, I'm all right with them. Barry's going to have a lot of pressure from me, especially to perform this year. Uh, he's got more than enough talent, I think, to perform well. He did decently well last year, but the talent he's got going this year is, I think you could have top five defense talent and production from this team. Barry just needs to make sure he gets those guys ready to go. The actual head coach himself, Matt LaFleur, he's shown competency. He's shown that he can run this offense. He's shown that he knows when to, tell Aaron, hey, we need to run the offense this way, or when to let Aaron Rodgers take the lead. He's shown a lot of maturity for a very young coach very early on. You have to give him credit for that too. Clearly learned a lot of that when you know coming from this Shanahan style offense, especially from McVay. McVay was another young coach who showed a lot of maturity early. And I think it's benefited the Packers in a huge way. So basically, the Packers are all in for this season, but they've made some good moves that I think could help their cap issue down the line, specifically on their actual O line. I think they are leaving themselves open for some solid play and replacement level, play from these rookies. With Rodgers on for their foreseeable future currently with this team, I think this team is looking to be very competitive for a little while here. As long as they are able to continue to draft fairly well and maneuver around some of the more, pressing issues, especially getting a tight end one and a wide receiver one. This team's looking good. It might be in for just a very short rebuild, quick 1 year reload, flip it, ready to go. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy the video, and I'll see you all next time. Later.